Welcome to our vlog series where Workday project manager Jane Davis and I are going to walk through the process of evaluating and implementing Workday for government customers. I'm your host, Amy LaHait, director of our client partner team here at Collaborative Solutions. And our vlog series is going to focus on a few areas. The first is going to be the pre-sales process. Next, we'll be selecting a vendor, and then finally preparing for implementation. So today I'd like to kick things off by focusing on the pre-sales process. And Jane was a customer and recently joined Collaborative as a project manager. So we're really excited to have her here today. Hey, Jane, nice to see you. Thanks for being here. So I know, Jane, sometimes getting started is often the hardest part. So I just wondered if you could share with us during your time at the City of Port Orange as their project manager, how did you all get started with the evaluation of the new system?
Yeah, well, one of the first things that happened was we identified a need for a new system. Their old system was really getting to the end of its life. It was 30 years old, so that shows you how big this project is, trying to get everybody off a 30-year-old system onto something new. And it wasn't necessarily very compatible with a lot of new cloud technologies that they were trying to introduce to the city, and it was just cumbersome and definitely time for a change. It wasn't really supporting the needs of the city and what they were trying to do going forward for the future. So, that's a big part really, is to, the releasing of the old and bringing in the new is to get everybody on board with that, and everybody was in full agreement that that was the best way forward. And then what they did was several core employees went on some ERP kind of boot camp training, and to try and get their head around what the project would be about and what it would entail. And a part of that, what they learned there was that successful implementations usually had a dedicated project manager full time. And that's where I became involved, because they didn't have anybody at the city in any role like that. So they brought me in completely new, although sometimes at some places there's already an existing employee who takes in that role. So I also helped them even with the procurement piece too, to kind of rounding up things and getting going. So that was a big part of that, was to bring on somebody who was really going to champion and help with getting things going. They also realized as well there was this need to work remotely. And that was something that was very appealing about going to a cloud system like Workday, that this was even before the COVID-19 situation had really blown into anything. But they knew that with these old legacy systems that are on premises, you can't just log in from home. Sometimes it's more difficult and people have to be tied to their desks. And obviously, nowadays, people are on the move, and Workday has great mobile functionality so that people can actually do a lot of things from their phone, even in the ERP system. So that's a really nice thing to have. So we were definitely looking at something like that to make the switch to. So and Collaborative definitely was helpful and do really good remote deployments as well, as you know, because I think you've seen some of those.
We have. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that feedback, because it's been quite a year, as you know, with all the challenges. And I think Collaborative has really been able to use our experience, because we were doing remote deployments before, and really build upon that this year. So that's fantastic to hear. Thanks for sharing that. So I think we'd also like to hear if the city chose to involve any outside help or assistance, and why that may be.
Yeah, so alongside bringing in me, they also engaged with GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association. And what they did was help us with some of the RFP requirements and preparing the RFP, because that's a huge undertaking and it's not quite the same as other purchases that you might make in a city. It's a very, very large thing and you want to get it right. And we realized that we had not done anything like that before and that we needed some assistance with that, and we wanted some assistance. So what I had noticed when I talked to lots of other organizations, which I did frequently from the beginning of the project, and I learned a lot, and I would highly recommend that too to anyone who's maybe going to be the project manager embarking on one of these projects, is to reach out and talk to other folks and see what they're doing or how they did that. And there were places I spoke to that weren't having such a great time, and I was like, maybe I don't want to do what they're doing. So I kind of listened to the people who were having a really good implementation. But what GFOA did was, and as part of my talking to other organizations, I realized that they were copying and pasting requirements sometimes from another organization. And GFOA quickly aligned us and said that's not really a good idea, because obviously one organization's requirements and the way they do things is not going to be the same as another. So what they did was kind of tear that up and help us start from the beginning. And together we reviewed our business processes. So we started having meetings with all different departments and pulled out some of our core business processes to analyze them in more detail and say, what are we doing here? Can we do things better? And that's where we really started to get the buy-in from the staff. And at first they were a little bit worried, like, why are we getting pulled into these meetings and what's this all about? Because they weren't necessarily used to all working across departments like that. But as time went on, they really kind of got into it and enjoyed it, and were able to share pain points about current processes and what they'd like to see different in the future. And then GFOA took that information away and kind of aligned us with some best practices too, industry best practices. So that was really helpful, that we had that guiding light, to help us get more streamlined, because I found that most organizations similar to Port Orange tend to have different processes that aren't necessarily working the same way, or there's just things that have been inherited over the years and it becomes a little bit messy, so to speak. So it's okay to have some things that weren't quite right, and the whole purpose is to get things good and straightened up and streamlined, and people really enjoyed those sessions. So I think that was a big part of it, was engaging with the whole city, getting people excited about things, and being able to gather the requirements for the RFP and putting out a really nice RFP out on the streets, that we were able to get some very good competition and bids on that we were able to select something that really worked best for us.
Great. That's some great feedback, I think, and hopefully this gives some food for thought for some of our viewers. Just want to say thank you, Jane, for your time and expertise today. During our next video, we are going to continue this discussion on the pre-sales evaluation process, and we are going to look at when and how do you engage with vendors, and then should you consider 2 separate bids or 1 bid, like a cloud versus on-premise bid. So that's all we have for now. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.